Good morning, my friends, and how are you all doing today? Well, I'm sitting here in my kitchen and I'm in the process of working on this guitar that I'm currently building using a lot of circuit boards. I'm calling it the Universal Circuit Guitar. And I guess in my mind, it's kind of bringing together modern technology, at least the visual of it, with the kind of timeless beauty of an instrument, if you will, that people have been making long before electric guitars. We had woodwind, and we had the lute, and the violin, and there was very little evolution of technology in the world of instruments until electric guitars took over the market, and then it just went crazy. And this isn't just guitars, of course, this is everything. I'm fascinated with history. The reason I titled this video, which I don't know what I'm exactly going to call it, but maybe, mechanical turtles all the way down, or machines all the way down, was my original thought. And that derives from an old, mythology within a certain culture that when they were asked about, what do they believe about the earth and the creation of the earth, they said that the earth rests on the back of a turtle. And there's this old kind of joke about, well, what happens when you get past that one turtle? What's beyond that? And they say, oh, it's another turtle. And they say, what's beyond that? It's another turtle. And the response is turtles all the way down, meaning don't try to make things complicated. It goes way back in history, and there's way too much to even for us to fathom or comprehend, meaning nobody has one access to the truth of existence, right? In the same way, the mechanical turtles all the way down to me relates to the fact that technology has brought us so far so quickly. And I'm trying to, like I said, with the guitar, I'm actually doing a kind of a circuit board design, and then I'm going to fill it with resin. And I thought about putting circuits in there, but in the end of this, it's going to have a little chip, a little RAM chip. And as I was sitting here thinking about just the amazing amount of technology that goes into building something like this circuit board right here with all these chips. And this just goes to a simple label making machine. We have a little thing like this that came out of a Vestax mixer, and when I was looking at it, we have capacitors, we have transformers, we have transistors, we have resistors, we have inductors. There's a whole bunch of different components, each one individually created and invented through history and improved upon through history. And then at the same time as the actual components are being invented, basically a capacitor is just a battery, it's a way to store energy. It allows you to have a consistent flow of energy without being interrupted by the line itself. It's beyond the scope of this discussion and beyond me, because I'm not an expert on this. I just find it fascinating how all these components go together and how it operates within silicon, like a silicon wafer, and communicating with the NPN and PNP are two different ways to do a transistor or a capacitor. Don't want to get into that because I'm still learning how all this works, but the point of this isn't about how these things operate, but the deep complexity, which all goes back to how the first computers were invented. It's irrelevant because these computers were invented using machinery that can only operate properly if they are within a very close tolerances. In other words, I'm fascinated with history, the history of invention. Things moved very slowly. I even watched a little documentary about screws. When were the first screws invented? When did they become very popular? Why weren't they made more? You'd think that these machines to create something like a lathe, a wood lathe or a metal lathe would be very simple. But how do you make a metal lathe unless you have metal hard enough to cut that metal with? And then something stable enough to actually mount it. And understanding basic principles is not something that, it took us a long time. And you can go back thousands of years, and there was lots of technology that was kind of forgotten or lost or moved around. Things like the Archimedes principle, the Archimedes screw, which is, if you've ever seen, it's the way that water was transported 1,000 years ago up a tube from a lower area to a larger area using a screw inside of a enclosed barrel. And this would, when turning it, would pull the water up. Learning these basic principles of motion and getting energy from moving gears or using animals to turn a yoke, whatever it might be. But here's the thing. We were very limited by the scope of what we could do at the moment at any one time. And that has completely changed now. Everything is available to us. And so I can go and I can buy a circuit board like this to build my own component. Or I could buy any type of metal I need in any shape, any size, any density or combination of metals, any alloy I could possibly want. And this has totally changed the way that we invent and the way that we live. And I'm not going to say it's a good thing, because I see us slowly drowning within our own technology. But it's hard not to step back and really recognize it for how amazing it is. But the bigger point I wanted to make here was that there was a time in history when we used to really look up to people as an, quote, inventor. The more you look into history, the more you find some of these inventors really didn't invent what we thought they invented. These ideas were stolen or borrowed or previously written by somebody else who could not muster the ability to get a patent or to actually produce it. And we've got guys like Edison who are like, oh, hey, I'll just use that idea. Not that he wasn't a genius or smart. All of that's pointless. The point is that we attach a certain invention to people in the past. And today that's changing. We have to associate it to an idea. There's geniuses out there, sure, but they're not inventing all of the components that are required to make, let's say, their electric cars, or somebody who owns a social media platform like Mark Zuckerberg and the Facebook thing. What did he do? He came up with, a site to connect people. It's just like an email, but there's nothing really that amazing. What is amazing is how many people use some of the products and therefore can make people extremely wealthy for inventions that, for better or worse, weren't really built completely by them. On the shoulders of giants means that all the things that we built in the past have been built slowly. So that screw that you're using to put together a component you're building, that screw itself had to be invented and perfected and honed and be to certain tolerances. And even the metal and the alloy and the factory that produces those things has to make sure that everything is perfect, and it's taken centuries to perfect. You think about, ancient Japan and the swords that they made. Some of those are still, some of those are like impossible to even replicate today because of the methods they used. A certain amount of carbon with the steel and a certain amount of hammering and folding. And the question isn't like, wow, how did they do something so difficult? But how many failures did they have before they got it right? And before they got it perfect? And I feel like today a lot of people are losing hope that there's anything new to invent. But there's plenty of things you can do. It's just utilizing existing resources. There's the old saying, there's nothing new under the sun. And I do believe that. I think that even some of the most, complex ideas, maybe we should step back and really ask ourselves whether we need more stuff or more technology. It has made our lives simpler, but I guess that's not really the message here as much as just saying that we have to realize that people within our families, even your grandparents, your relatives, they probably, at least some of them, work their asses off, either in a field to learn how to grow better vegetables, or in a factory to help produce things for a particular cause or a need. Some of them were inventors, some of them were creative, some of them were just workers. Everybody had a place and a part to play in the Industrial Revolution. All of our families played some part in this revolution of industry, and so many people suffered and died in horrible conditions in mines and in factories. And here we are now, at a time where we can utilize all these things that our ancestors fought so hard to create, invent, and work towards. And we kind of take it for granted. So I guess it's important just to say that we don't take it for granted. That every time you look at something as simple as a little chip, or even a little font card that goes in an old machine, it's just amazing. Every piece of this was invented by people and not individual people. Most of these were invented by several different people working together because humans are better at cooperation. And we found a way to be more divided as the years go on. That's really only going to work as long as things are relatively peaceful in an area, right? As soon as shit gets hard, people band together and they try to help each other out. I'd like to see a lot of that. I'd like to see us acknowledging that all the medicine that these pharmaceutical companies are making, billions of dollars off of medications that have been around for 50 years that maybe your own grandfather participated in creating or inventing. When Jonas Salk invented the polio vaccine in the 50s or 40s, whichever it was, he says he was asked whether he was going to patent it, and he said no. Could you patent the sun? And his thing was, this is a gift to humanity. It was an invention. Just because I came up with it doesn't mean I want to dominate it and profit off of it. But the hopes that a world where things would get easy enough in our world to where we could actually step back and say, okay, maybe profit isn't what it's all about. It just never really sunk in with a lot of people. And so the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And we've got the Bezos and the Musks and the Zuckerbergs of the world who just continue to just skyrocket in their funds. And people say, oh yeah, they've worked hard for it. They're great inventors. They're intelligent. But are they really? Or is that money coming off the backs of people? Because money and resources don't just come out of thin air. But at any rate, we're all part of this and we all belong to it. And all things belong to us. I'm strongly against intellectual property rights and copyright protection in the modern day. I'm saying it was beneficial in the past. You can look back to even a couple decades back to where it was actually beneficial. But now it's only holding back the evolution of inventions, the evolution of new things. When somebody comes up with a new creation, somebody says, nope, sorry, somebody else already has a patent on that. Or, your microchip looks a little too much like mine, and even though this might benefit a lot of people, we're going to sue your ass out of existence. And so maybe that's why I'm not anti capitalist so much as just anti-ignorant and greed. But here we are with all the stuff at our disposal, and we literally dispose of it. There's more of these in a landfill. Doesn't have to be that way. Made with crappy solder, crappy components. Cars are made to fall apart. Phones are made to fall apart. And it's really disgusting, the potential we have for such amazing technology that could pull us out of a lot of our problems. Instead, we want something disposable, so next year you have to buy another one. I guess nothing symbolizes modern ignorance more than seeing a line all the way down the block of people waiting for the latest iPhone. Sorry to say, if you're one of them, it's just really pathetic. I mean, it shows how far we've fallen and how desperate we are to just keep up with the Joneses, and everything else is just getting thrown in the landfill. So remember, a lot of the resources that brought us to this point, we deserve better. And we should demand better from those who do manufacture, and the laws should favor the small guy. But who am I? Just a petty worker in this country. Don't mind me. Talk to y'all next time. Be sure to check out my 15-minute free thinking podcast and whatever else you might be interested in, and I'll talk to you next time. Be well.